The summer sun blazed down on the coastal town of St. Malo, casting a warm, golden glow over everything it touched. The salty breeze danced through the air, carrying the scent of the sea and the promise of adventure. I stood on the weathered wooden dock with my father, the rhythmic sound of the waves lapping against the hull of our small fishing boat providing a familiar backdrop to our morning routine. I could see the horizon stretching endlessly, where the sky kissed the ocean, and I felt a surge of excitement coursing through my veins. "Mateus," my father called, breaking my reverie. He was a sturdy man with skin as dark as the night, his hands calloused from years of working the sea. "Grab the nets. We have to be quick before the tide changes." I nodded, my heart racing at the thought of pulling in a good catch. As I hoisted the nets, I could feel the sun warming my back, its rays energizing me for the task ahead. "Do you remember the story of the old lighthouse?" my father began, as we prepared the nets together. "The one that stood at the edge of the cliffs?" I smiled, knowing the tale well. He often recounted how the lighthouse keeper had saved countless fishermen from perilous storms by guiding them home with his light. "Of course, Dad. You always say that the sea is full of mysteries, but it's the lighthouse that reminds us to find our way back," I replied, casting a glance at the worn path leading to the cliffs. The lighthouse stood tall, a sentinel watching over our town. "That's right, son. The sea can be a friend and a foe. Respect it, and it will reward you," he said, his voice steady and serious. I could sense the depth of his connection to the ocean, a bond one was beginning to understand as I grew older. The sea was our livelihood, but it was also a living entity, one that demanded respect and humility. As we set out into the water, the world around us transformed. The laughter of children playing on the beach faded away, replaced by the soft murmur of the waves and the occasional cry of a seagull. I felt at home here, surrounded by the vastness of the ocean, a place where I could escape the limitations of the world on land. My father and I worked in unison, our movements fluid and practiced, each tug of the net a dance between man and nature. "Do you think we'll catch anything today?" I asked, my eyes scanning the water for signs of movement. "Patience, my boy," he replied with a knowing smile. "The sea has its own rhythm. We must learn to listen." Just then, a distant sound broke through the tranquil atmosphere, the unmistakable music of laughter and chatter drifting from the direction of the mansion overlooking the beach. I looked up, my brows furrowing as I caught a glimpse of the lavish party taking place. Bright decorations and glamorous outfits contrasted sharply with our simple fishing attire and weathered boat. "Looks like someone's celebrating," I remarked, feeling a twinge of envy at the sight of their carefree joy. "Don't let it distract you," my father cautioned, pulling in the nets once more. "We have our own celebrations, don't forget." I nodded, but my mind was already wandering, imagining the lives of those who lived in the mansion, where everything was handed to them and every day was a new adventure of luxury. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, I couldn't shake the feeling of longing that bubbled within me. A part of me wanted to be part of that world, to wear the glittering clothes and dance under the stars. But I knew my place was here, on the water, surrounded by the familiar embrace of the sea. "Dad, do you ever wonder what it's like to live in a mansion?" I asked, glancing at him. He paused, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "I suppose it's different, but remember, Mateus, wealth isn't everything. The sea teaches us what truly matters: family, hard work, and respect for nature." I nodded, absorbing his wisdom. As we continued to fish, the laughter from the party faded into the background, replaced by the sound of the waves crashing against our boat. I felt a deep connection to my father and our simple life, even as the allure of the world beyond the shore tugged at my heart. Little did I know, that day would unfold in ways I could never have imagined, setting in motion events that would change everything for me. A simple boy from a fishing village and a girl from a life of privilege. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden glow over the ocean's surface. I stood on the rocky outcrop, my fishing gear laid out beside me, but my attention was elsewhere. I had noticed her, the girl from the mansion, Louisa. She waded into the water, her laughter mingling with the sound of the waves. There was something alluring about her, something that drew me in despite the difference in our worlds. I felt a strange pull, as if the ocean itself was urging me to pay attention. She's out there alone, I muttered to myself, instinctively gripping the fishing line tighter. My father's lessons echoed in my mind. The sea can be beautiful but treacherous. I returned my gaze to the line, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The tide was shifting, and I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. Minutes passed, but I kept glancing back at Louisa. She seemed carefree, dancing with the waves, completely unaware of the danger lurking just below the surface. I forced myself to focus on my fishing, but my instincts wouldn't let me ignore her. The ocean could change in an instant, and I knew that all too well. Suddenly, a strong wave crashed against her, and I saw her stumble. My heart raced as I dropped my fishing gear and stood up, straining to see through the spray of the ocean. There it was. Her laughter turned into a gasp, and panic flashed across her face as she was pulled further from the shore. "Louisa!" I shouted, my voice barely audible over the roar of the waves. I felt a jolt of fear coursing through me, and before I could think, I was sprinting toward the water's edge. My feet sank into the sand, but I didn't hesitate. I dove into the waves, the cold water enveloping me as I fought against the current. With every stroke, I could see her flailing, her dark hair swirling around her like seaweed. "Stay calm. I'm coming," I called out, my voice shaking. I remembered my father's teachings, the rhythm of the waves, the way to navigate through the currents. I focused on that, pushing through the water with all my might. My lungs burned as I swam closer, the ocean trying to pull me back, but I was determined. I could see the fear in her eyes now, and it fueled my resolve. "Just hold on, Louisa," I shouted again, reaching out my hand. She grabbed my wrist, desperation in her grip, and I felt the weight of her fear seep into my bones. I can't swim," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper against the crashing waves. "Just trust me," I yelled, trying to reassure her despite the panic rising in my chest. I kicked harder, feeling the water tugging at me, but I refused to look back. I focused on the shore, on the safety of solid ground, and pulled her along with me. "Mateus!" she cried, her grip tightening as we fought against the waves together. I could feel her fear, and it ignited a fire within me. I would not let her drown. I would not let her be pulled away from everything she knew. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I felt the sand beneath my feet. I pushed forward, dragging both of us through the shallows until we collapsed on the shore, gasping for air. "Are you okay?" I managed to ask between breaths, my heart racing not just from exertion, but from the shock of what just happened. I turned to look at her, and in that moment, our worlds collided in a way I never expected. Louisa lay beside me, her chest heaving, and she looked at me with wide eyes filled with gratitude and disbelief. "Thank you. I thought I was going to drown," she stammered, her voice shaky. I nodded, still trying to catch my breath. "You shouldn't have gone out so far. The tide can change quickly," I replied, my voice more steady now, but still trembling with adrenaline. She sat up slowly, brushing the sand off her arms, her expression shifting from fear to a dawning realization. "You saved me," she whispered, and for a moment, we simply stared at each other, the weight of our differences hanging in the air like the salty breeze around us. In that moment, standing on that beach, two worlds collided, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The salty water clung to my skin as I dragged Louisa onto the sand, both of us gasping for air. My heart raced, not just from the exertion of fighting the current, but from the shock of what I had just done. I had saved her, a girl from a world so different from mine. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, contrasting sharply with the cold reality of our circumstances. As I lay there, catching my breath, I could feel her glance at me. I turned my head slightly, and our eyes locked for a moment. "Thank you," she finally murmured, her voice shaky but sincere. You really saved me?" I nodded, still trying to process the adrenaline. "You shouldn't have gone so far out. The waves can be dangerous." My voice came out low, almost a whisper, as if I were afraid to break the fragile moment. Louisa brushed a strand of wet hair from her face, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. I didn't think. I just wanted to escape for a bit. Everyone was suffocating me. She looked away, staring out at the rolling waves, as if they held answers to questions she hadn't yet voiced. Yeah, I get that, I replied, trying to find common ground. Sometimes it feels like the sea is the only place you can breathe. I could sense the weight of her world pressing down on her, and for a moment, I wanted to reach out and tell her that I understood, even if I had never lived her life. She turned back to me, her expression softening. You're different from everyone else here, aren't you? You know the ocean. I chuckled lightly, the sound feeling foreign in the seriousness of the moment. I grew up by it. My dad taught me everything. It's like a part of me. I paused, searching her gaze for understanding. But it's not just about knowing how to swim. It's about respecting it, knowing when to go out and when to stay away. Louisa looked impressed. You're like a guardian of the sea, she said, her voice imbued with a sense of wonder. I've always been surrounded by so much privilege, but I've never really known the ocean like you do. Her words struck me unexpectedly, a mix of admiration and disbelief. I could hardly imagine what it would be like to live in her world, where everything was handed to you. Yet here she was, sitting beside me, in awe of the life I had always considered ordinary. Just then, the laughter from the party echoed in the distance, a stark reminder of the world we both belonged to but felt so separate from. I could see the flickering lights of her family's mansion, a stronghold of wealth and social standing, and I knew that the people there would never understand what we were experiencing right now. Do you want to go back? I asked, the thought of her returning to that life making my heart sink. She hesitated, biting her lip, then shook her head slowly. Not yet. I don't want to face them right now. Her vulnerability surprised me, revealing a side of her that was buried beneath layers of expectation and privilege. Yeah, I know that feeling, I admitted, looking out at the horizon. Sometimes you just need a moment away from it all. Louisa smiled faintly, and in that moment, I felt a connection stronger than I had ever expected. The ocean had brought us together, and I wondered what other ties might form between us if we dared to explore this uncharted territory. But even as I found myself wanting to draw closer to her, I could hear the whispers of the town, the judgments that would come for a boy like me associating with a girl like her. Would we be able to bridge the gap that society had built between our worlds? The cool breeze rustled the palm trees behind us, and I knew we had to make a choice. We could either let the tides of our lives carry us apart or navigate this new friendship together. I wanted to believe we could find a way, but the stakes felt impossibly high. Louisa, I said tentatively, my voice steadying, what if we just talked more? About everything? I mean, the ocean, our lives. The things we don't usually share with anyone. She nodded, her eyes lighting up with a sense of possibility. I'd like that. I'd really like that. And as we sat on the beach, the waves crashing gently at our feet, I felt the weight of the world shift just a little, as if the ocean itself was encouraging us to explore the depths of an unlikely friendship. The sun had begun its descent, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, as I made my way to our secret spot near the rocky outcrop. It was the only place where I felt the weight of the world lift, if only for a moment. I could already see Louisa sitting on a weathered log, her hair catching the last rays of sunlight. My heart raced. It was a mix of excitement and apprehension. We were from two worlds, yet here we were, drawn together by circumstance and something deeper. Hey, Mateus, she called out, her voice ringing with a lilt of joy that made me smile. I was starting to think you weren't coming. Wouldn't miss it for the world, I replied, trying to sound casual, though I could hardly contain the thrill of being near her. I sat beside her, our shoulders nearly touching, and for a moment, the world around us faded away. Tell me more about your life here, she said, her bright eyes searching my face for answers. I know about the sea, but what about your family? I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts as the waves lapped at the shore. My father and I fish every morning. It's not just a job, it's a way of life. The ocean gives us everything, but it also takes. You learn to respect it, to listen to its rhythms. Louisa nodded, her expression serious. It sounds beautiful. My life is, well, it's different. I have everything I could want, but sometimes I feel trapped. My parents expect so much from me. She hesitated, biting her lip. They don't understand what I really want. What do you want? I asked, my curiosity piqued. I want to be free, she admitted, her voice low and earnest. I want to explore the world, meet people, experience life beyond these walls. Her gaze drifted to the horizon, as if she could glimpse the places she longed to see. I felt a pang of longing in my chest. You're brave, Louisa. It's easy to stay in the comfort of what you know, but it takes courage to step outside of it. She turned her head sharply, meeting my eyes. And you, Mateus? You risked everything for me that day in the water. What drives you? I chuckled softly, though my heart raced. I do what I have to do. The sea is my home, and when I saw you struggling, it felt instinctive to help. I couldn't just stand by. A silence enveloped us, thick with unspoken words. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the pull between her privileged life and the raw authenticity of mine. Mateus, do you think we can really be friends? She finally asked, vulnerability evident in her voice. Why not? I replied, though doubt lingered in the back of my mind. Friendship doesn't care about class or color. It's about connection. I wish everyone thought that way, she sighed, leaning back on her hands. My parents would never approve. They think I should only surround myself with people who look like me. Is that what you want? I challenged gently. To live in a bubble? No, she said fiercely, sitting up straighter. I want to break free from that bubble. You make me feel alive, Mateus. This us makes me feel real. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a warmth seep into my bones. Then let's keep meeting like this. We can learn from each other. Deal, she smiled, a radiant expression that lit up the encroaching darkness. You teach me about the sea, and I'll teach you about everything else. We laughed, and for a moment, the laughter drowned out the noise of the world around us. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling that our secret wouldn't remain hidden for long. The reality of our lives loomed over us like a storm cloud, ready to unleash its fury. Days passed, and our clandestine meetings became a lifeline for both of us. We exchanged stories, dreams, and fears, weaving a tapestry of friendship that felt both exhilarating and dangerous. Yet I could sense the tension building, especially when Louisa mentioned her parents growing suspicious. I dismissed it, thinking that surely they wouldn't care about a friendship. But I was wrong. One afternoon, as we sat on the beach, I noticed a shadow approach. I turned, my heart sinking as I recognized the figure of Louisa's father, stern and imposing. My stomach twisted into knots as he walked toward us, clearly agitated. Louisa, he barked, his voice slicing through the calm of the beach. What are you doing here? Louisa's eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. Dad, Enough, he interrupted, his gaze shifting to me. And who is this boy? I won't have you associating with someone from that part of town. I felt my heart drop, the weight of his words pressing down on me. I could see the fear in Louisa's eyes, and it mirrored my own sense of impending loss. I wanted to defend myself, to tell him that I was more than just a label, but the words caught in my throat. Dad, please. Louisa pleaded, her voice trembling. He's my friend. He's not your friend, Louisa. He's a distraction, a risk you can't afford to take. His voice was cold, and I could feel the chasm between our worlds widening. As they walked away, Louisa's gaze lingered on me, filled with regret and defiance. I wanted to shout after her, to promise that I wouldn't let her down, but the words escaped me. Instead, I stood there, feeling the weight of their world pressing against me, knowing that the fragile bond we had forged was now under siege. I stood at the edge of the kitchen, my heart pounding as I confronted my parents. The opulence of our home felt suffocating. The ornate chandeliers and polished marble floors a stark contrast to the turmoil churning inside me. Mateus is my friend, I declared, my voice rising with indignation. You can't just dismiss him because of where he comes from. My mother, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently on the table, shot me a disapproving glare. Louisa, this isn't just about you. It's about our family's reputation. You must understand the implications of associating with someone like him. He's not one of us. I felt a surge of anger mixed with confusion. What does that even mean? He saved my life. He's brave and kind. I don't care about the money or the status. Why can't you see that? My father, his brow furrowed, interjected. It's not personal, sweetheart. We're trying to protect you. People talk. They will judge you, and we cannot afford that. You have a future to think about. A future? I scoffed, feeling the weight of their expectations crushing me. You mean the future you've planned out for me? A future where I'm just a pawn in your game of social standing? Silence fell in the room, thick and uncomfortable. My mother's expression softened momentarily, but it quickly hardened again. You're being dramatic, Louisa. This is reality. You need to accept it. I stormed out of the kitchen, my heart heavy with frustration and loneliness. I felt like a ghost in my own home, trapped in a gilded cage while the world outside pulsed with life. I needed to see Mateus. I needed to feel the warmth of his friendship, the electric connection we shared. But as I reached the beach, I spotted him in the distance, his silhouette framed against the shimmering waves. He stood there, seemingly at peace with the ocean, yet I could sense the turmoil beneath the surface. He turned his head slightly, and our eyes met, a moment of recognition passing between us. But then, he looked away, as if the weight of societal expectations pulled him down. Mateus, I called out, my voice trembling with urgency. He hesitated, and for a moment, I thought he might turn back, but instead, he walked further away, deeper into the shadows of the dunes. Louisa, you shouldn't be here, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper when I caught up to him. The distance between us felt insurmountable, a chasm created by the very world we lived in. Why are you pushing me away? I pleaded, desperation creeping into my tone. I thought we were friends. Doesn't that mean something? It does, he replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon. But it's complicated. You don't understand what it's like for someone like me. I can't drag you into this mess. Your life is different. Different? I echoed, incredulity washing over me. Is it so different that we can't even be friends? You saved my life, Mateus. You showed me a world I never knew existed. And now, because your skin is a different shade and your life is less privileged, I'm supposed to just forget that? He turned to face me, his dark eyes filled with a mixture of frustration and sadness. You don't get it, do you? The town will never accept us. Your parents will never accept me. This is bigger than us. And that's why we have to fight back. I exclaimed, my heart racing. We can't just let them dictate our lives. There's so much more to us than what they see. We can show them. Mateus shook his head, a bitter smile creeping onto his lips. That's a nice thought, Louisa, but it doesn't change reality. I can't risk your future for a friendship that the world won't accept. His words pierced through me like a dagger, and I felt tears welling up in my eyes. You're giving up on us? Just like that? I'm trying to protect you, he said quietly, his voice breaking. Sometimes love means letting go. As he walked away, my heart shattered. I stood alone on the beach, the waves crashing against the shore, mirroring the chaos inside me. I longed for the connection we had shared, the laughter, the understanding. But now, it felt like a distant memory, slipping through my fingers like sand. The salty breeze wrapped around me as I stood on the beach, staring out at the waves that had once threatened to swallow Louisa whole. My heart raced, not from the remnants of fear for her safety, but from the spark of determination that ignited within me. Louisa had organized a beach event, one meant to promote diversity and inclusion in our small coastal town, a concept that felt as foreign to me as the opulence of her family's mansion. Mateus, I heard her voice call out, piercing through my thoughts. She waved from a distance, her smile bright against the backdrop of the setting sun. The golden rays danced on her skin, the same way they had danced on the water during our first encounter. I hesitated, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, approaching her cautiously. "You know how people can be." She stepped closer, her eyes sparkling with conviction. "I don't care. We need to show them that we can come together, that our differences can be a strength instead of a barrier." Her passion was infectious. I watched as she busily organized the small gathering, her enthusiasm radiating like the sun overhead. Local families began to arrive, some familiar faces from the village and others from the town's more affluent side. I could see the confusion mingling with curiosity on their faces. "Mateus, come help me with the banners," Louisa called, pulling me towards a colorful display she had made. As I helped her tie the fabric to the posts, I couldn't help but admire her courage. "You've really thought this through, haven't you?" "Of course. It's time to change the narrative," she replied, her fingers deftly securing the banner. "We can't let fear dictate our lives." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting an orange glow over the beach, I felt a warmth spreading through me. I began to smile, the nerves of earlier dissipating. A sense of unity filled the air as people mingled, sharing stories, laughter, and food. "Look at them," I said, gesturing towards a group of children playing in the sand, their laughter echoing against the waves. "They don't care about where we come from." "Exactly," Louisa exclaimed, her eyes shining with hope. "This is what it's all about." As the event continued, I felt the walls that had once divided our community starting to crumble. Conversations flowed freely, and I found myself laughing alongside people I had never spoken to before. For the first time, the beach felt like a shared space, a bridge connecting our worlds instead of a dividing line. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of pink and purple, I found a moment to step aside with Louisa. We walked along the shoreline, the waves lapping at our feet. "I'm so proud of you," I said quietly, glancing at her. "You didn't just bring us together. You made us see each other." She turned to me, her expression serious yet soft. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mateus. You believed in me when I was scared." I paused, taking in the sincerity of her words. "I think I was scared too, but seeing you fight for this, it's inspiring." We stopped walking, the sound of the ocean wrapping around us like a warm embrace. In that moment, the barriers that had once seemed insurmountable felt like mere illusions. I stepped closer, and she met me halfway, our eyes locked in understanding. "Whatever happens next," she said softly, "I want you to know that this friendship, what we have, it's real." I nodded, feeling a rush of emotions. "And it's beautiful." With the sun setting behind us, I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her into a tight embrace. It felt right, like two pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. The laughter and chatter from the event faded into the background as we stood there, united not just as friends, but as catalysts for change in our town. The horizon glowed with promise, and for the first time, I felt a sense of hope for the future, not just for us, but for everyone around us. Together, we would continue to break down walls and build bridges, one moment at a time.